Hey there, everyone. That sexy nerd is back again. And we got the final part of Henry Ford, guys. And he has become full Nazi, evil genius, Trump dictator 2024. I don't know. But yeah, man, this guy has gone completely off the damn deep end, to be honest. And it's so sad. I have a Ford. But, you know, at the end of the day, you can't change the past. You can only condemn it. So people don't repeat things in the future. That's what some people don't seem to understand. The reason why we condemn it today is so we don't repeat these mistakes going forward. Food for thought. But yeah, I want to see how everything went down, because they're saying he has a tragic end. I mean, this Ford is still one of the biggest companies in the world. I mean, and again, as the strike continues, where they're no close to settling on a deal. I mean, as the roots of the company really go deep and really giving the American worker something to strive for, but it's just become a company that just doesn't believe in that anymore, you know? And it's really sad. But again, it's just like the downfall of Henry Ford. You no longer recognize the company that started. So let's just not be depressed anymore. Let's just see how this story ends. And remember, please smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And let's do this thing, y'all.
Island Park Plant, Dearborn, Michigan, 1927. The photographer takes the photo, the flash illuminating Henry and Edsel Ford as they stand between Ford's old quadricycle and the 15 millionth Model T. They get inside the car with two other executives and drive it in a parade to commemorate the event. But the tone isn't celebratory, it's funereal. No one's talking. Days ago, Henry and Edsel had a massive blowout. The usually meek Edsel had finally taken a stand. To survive, the company needs to move on from the Model T. Sales are flagging, it's boxy and unstylish, barely changed since 1908. Meanwhile, their competitors are now pumping out yearly models and selling cars on installment. Not to mention Henry Ford's anti-Semitic articles have triggered a boycott against the company. With the Model T, Ford had created the modern age, but he increasingly loathes the world he helped make, as well as the son set to succeed him. Today's story of the tragic end of an American icon is made possible by Nebula, where you can watch this and all of our episodes without ads like this one for Nebula. You get it. In 1927, the Ford Motor Company released their new Model A, its first new car since the Model T. Henry Ford contributed the engine work, while Edsel took care of the body, giving it a classic silhouette and modern styling. It also came in a variety of colors and body styles and was the first vehicle with a safety glass windshield. But not only the car was different, the company that had produced it had changed significantly, and so had Henry Ford. By this time, he'd forced out so many executives that only a few, Sorensen among them, were left from those early days. Ford was isolated, increasingly stubborn, and prone to lash out, and his favorite target for this ire was tragically his own son, Edsel. Now, everybody at the plant loved Edsel. He was quiet, a team player, fair-minded, and generally kind. And while he didn't have his father's engineering ability, he did love automobiles, he knew the company inside and out, and had a good eye for what modern consumers wanted. But his high-class education had also alienated him further from his father. He hung around with the sons of the rich in Grosse Pointe, which his father hated. He smoked and drank alcohol. To his father, Edsel came to represent all of the things about the modern age that he hated. The easy morality, the short skirts, the cocktail parties and theater. Though Ford had handed the presidency to Edsel in 1919, in reality, the father was still calling all the shots. He berated and undercut Edsel in front of the board, verbally abused him, and when he was away, broke into his house to smash his liquor bottles with a cane. When Edsel started digging a foundation,
Dick! Why? That's the pettiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
For a new building without Henry's approval, Ford ordered the work to stop and the hole to never be filled in, so Edsel had to drive by it every day on his way to work. Once, when Edsel started tinkering with a new engine, Ford invited him to see a new conveyor-fed scrapping machine at the plant. To Edsel's horror, The first item fed into that scrapper was
No!
his new engine. Part of this was an attempt to provoke Edsel, to try to bring out the hard-edged anger Ford was so famous for, because he perceived his son as a weakling and wanted to toughen him. Instead, it just beat Edsel down. But Ford, for his part, could not find peace at the plant anymore either. He'd fought hard and broken relationships in order to build the massive River Rouge plant, only to find he hated being there. Highland Park was manageable, but the Rouge was a 900-acre city. The noise, the heat, the constant movement was intolerable for him. Increasingly, Ford withdrew to his other great project, Greenfield Village. Spending millions, Ford had not only reconstructed the home of his youth, but bought and relocated to it buildings of historic or architectural value from across the United States. He had a museum of American technology and managed to find and purchase not only all of his old race cars, but the first Westinghouse steam engine he ever worked. There he immersed himself in an illusion of his childhood version of America, the one he'd helped kill. He did farm work, which he'd always avoided as a child, and also got strange ideas. Among the most disastrous of which was Fordlandia, a rubber plantation in the Brazilian Amazon, where Ford wanted workers to produce low-cost rubber while living in an American-style utopian community that he'd personally designed, down to the menu offerings. In fact, Fordlandia was so bananas, we already did a whole series of shorts on it that you might have seen. But Ford was not the only one feeling restless and depressed. Workers at the Rouge began to fall behind and feel the pressure, especially as Ford increased their workload and conditions worsened. And the workers started thinking they needed to organize. But in their way was the one man that Ford did still listen to, Harry Bennett. A former Navy sailor and amateur boxer that Ford had hired by happenstance in 1916, Bennett's first act on appearing at the Ford plant was to get in an argument and punch a man in the throat. As head of the service department, Ford's security wing, Bennett ruled the Rouge. He and his crew, a group of boxers, athletes, and low-level gangsters, spied on employees.
Bootleggers.
Bennett terminated workers for owning a non-Ford car, for taking too long in the bathroom. Famously wealthy, he raised lions for fun and would walk them around on a leash to intimidate employees. And if anyone breathed a word about organizing, his goons would beat him in the back room. Things became even rockier in 1929, when the Great Depression caused car purchases to dry up overnight. For the first time, Ford had to resort to massive layoffs, leading to tragedy. On March 7th, 1932, 3,000 to 5,000 unemployed workers marched from Detroit to the Rouge in the Ford Hunger March, demanding their jobs back. The marchers persevered through police tear gas and batons, then against fire hoses. But finally, police and Ford security opened up with firearms. Not just sidearms, mind you, but machine guns. Harry Bennett ran his car close to the retreating crowd, firing a revolver out his window. 5 workers died and 60 were injured. 5 years later, when United Auto Workers members were handing out leaflets protesting wages and conditions at the Rouge, Ford security jumped them and beat them in front of reporters' cameras. The incident looked bad for Ford and helped force him to the negotiating table, officially signing a consent to organize his factory in 1935. Ford's name also continued to taint the brand. Adolf Hitler had admired Ford's writing on Jews, kept a life-size portrait of Ford in his office, and personally name-checked him in Mein Kampf.
So he's basically the way Donald Trump is to Ronald Reagan.
Ford had indirectly helped Germany rearm as well, hosting delegations from Germany and the Soviet Union, where he and other car manufacturers like GM freely shared the principles of mass production. Overseas, Ford plants further embedded these lessons. And it was for this, more than anything else, that in 1938, the Nazi state awarded Ford the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest award that could be bestowed upon a foreigner, and Ford happily accepted.
Of course.
This was not the behavior America wanted to see. Particularly after 1941, when Ford was given government contracts to make Sherman tanks, B-24 bombers, and Jeeps for the American war effort. Ironically, Ford Motor Company's German branch, now severed from its American parent company, was simultaneously using slave labor to make war machines for the Third Reich.
Really?
Ford's family issues deteriorated as well. He had Harry Bennett spy on Edsel and continued to berate and belittle him. Why was he so weak? Why did he look sick all the time? It's the liquor, no doubt. Then, when Edsel revealed that he had stomach cancer, his father didn't stop. This was his fault, Ford said, for poor living. If Edsel would only cut out dairy and exercise more, it would go away. It would not. Edsel Ford, who had loved automobiles since he was a toddler, watching his father test drive the quadricycle, died at the age of 49.
Oh.
Ford, grieving and remorseful, stepped in as temporary president. Yet by that time he was 79 and had secretly suffered a stroke. He did
Shit.
little and was largely a puppet of powerful executives like Sorensen and Bennett. Angry, he forced Sorensen out, only to be confronted by his wife and daughter, who threatened to sell their stock to those outside the family if he did not resign. After trying and failing to make Bennett president, he turned the company over to his grandson, Henry Ford II.
Wow.
And the young Ford's first act was to fire Harry Bennett. Henry
Screw you.
Ford died in 1947. At the age of 83, his wife Clara and a longtime friend, likely his mistress, at his side. During the public viewing, 5,000 people passed his casket per hour. Then they explored the rest of Greenfield Village, America as it once was, and reflected on the brilliant, complicated, and frequently terrible man who had changed their country from these farmhouses and dirt streets to the world's foremost economic power. A boy who hated horses. Ford's story is an excellent reminder that there's always multiple facets to historical figures. Heck, when I learned about Henry Ford in school, they never included any of the darkness of his later life.
I would
And
imagine.
because we believe that that kind of context is important,
Seriously, I gotta say that right now. I learned a lot in school and high school and everything, and when I started learning about all this historical stuff, on YouTube basically, I never knew any of the real things. Like, it really sucks how our education system really failed us, you know. But yeah, that was a great story, but it's a sad story. But at least they redeemed themselves. At least the company did. But what did you think of the story? I thought it was great. I can't wait to see what's next. And should I do the Ramesses series? Maybe I should. I'm thinking I am, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, please smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And I'll see you all in the next video.